This week in Louisiana agriculture, another round of budget cuts at the LSU Ag Center sends more employees out the door.
I'm A.J. Bean here in Rapides Parish. I'll have details on how dry weather has adversely affected this year's cotton crop.
Problems at the port of Lake Charles mean it could cost you more to ship your grain. I'm Kristen Oakes, and I'll have that story coming up.
Hello everyone, I'm Michael Dana. Thanks so much for joining us. Since 2008, the LSU Ag Center has seen a 30% reduction in its funding, has had to cut 314 jobs, and is closing 3 of its research stations. Now, another round of cuts threatens more Ag Center jobs and will force the agency to cut even more of its programs. Dr. Bill Richardson, Chancellor of the LSU Ag Center, tells This Week in Louisiana Agriculture that this latest hit to his budget will likely force his operation to cut people and programs that do not directly support what he called the Ag Center's core mission.
An Ag Center researcher studies soybean diseases. A rice specialist looks for ways to curb sheath blight in the state's second largest row crop. And a local beekeeper depends on research and extension to keep his hives healthy and his honey business thriving. All of these programs are part of the LSU Ag Center and its research and extension efforts. But now, all these programs might be in jeopardy.
We're just in a position where we want to maintain quality of the things we're doing, and there's some things that we're just probably going to have to decide that no longer is part of our role, scope, and mission.
To date, the LSU Ag Center, which relies on the state legislature for the lion's share of its funding, has seen its state appropriation reduced by more than $16 million. During that same period, increases in mandated costs like health insurance and other employee benefits have risen more than $11 million. But unlike the rest of the LSU system, Richardson said, the Ag Center doesn't have tuition paid by students to cover its budget shortfalls.
And so each year we've got creative, we've been innovative, we've found ways to deal with this, but we're to the point now where I'm out of flexibility. I've got to look at people, I've got to look at programs.
So Richardson said in the face of such massive budget cuts, his Ag Center will have to get leaner and meaner, a return to what he called core programs. Programs that support the strongest aspects of Louisiana's production agriculture.
We only want to do extension programs where we have a research base to support it, with the exception of 4-H, and that's a totally separate thing. In the family areas, we're looking at nutrition. That fits what we're doing with research.
Since it was founded by the Smith-Lever Act in 1914, the LSU Ag Center, through its cooperative extension programs, has put valuable research into the hands of Louisiana's farmers. Its programs have also helped rural communities with everything from educational outreach to rural health care. Richardson said he's had to make some tough calls about the budget of late, which programs and people stay, and which ones go out the door.
I get asked a lot as we go around the state, how you doing? I said, well, actually, we're going to take this as an opportunity. It's going to give us an opportunity to determine what's really important and do that well, and realize we no longer can be all things to all people.
Dr. Richardson said the Ag Center will continue to operate what he called premier facilities like the Ag Center's Rice Research Station in Crowley and the Audubon Sugar Institute in St. Gabriel. He said programs such as family financial management and early childhood nutrition could be done away with in the wake of this latest round of cuts. However, Richardson added his goal is to have a cooperative extension office open in every parish in the state, even if that means fewer staffers and consolidated programs. Just this week, the Ag Center announced it was closing its swine farm on the LSU campus. The Port of Lake Charles is the 11th largest port in the country, and marine activity there generated more than 58,000 jobs and contributed nearly $8 billion to the state's economy last year. But as This Week in Louisiana Agriculture's Kristen Oakes tells us, without proper funding levels for maintenance and improvements, shipping through the Calcasieu Channel could come to a halt.
From a few hundred feet in the air, the Calcasieu shipping channel appears to be moving along just fine. But here on the ground, state officials exposed a massive roadblock on one of the state's main water highways.
The major issue is the fact that this channel that's normally maintained at 400 feet width is now at 175 feet. The Corps has not given enough money to dredge these bodies of water.
LDAF Commissioner Dr. Mike Strain told officials at the Port of Lake Charles this problem could affect not only shipping, but also farmers across the country.
If we can't ship through the ports in South Louisiana, you're looking at 10 to 20 cents a bushel to ship it to the East Coast, West Coast, and ship it from there. So if you look at what it means to America's farmers, Louisiana's farmers, it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
David Trent, president of Lake Charles Pilots Association, said dredging is crucial for the safety and economic viability of the channel traffic.
We have to reduce draft, take special considerations in the handling of them, make sure that they're on the proper high tide So it limits us in our scheduling.
Trent said dredging may be the solution, but the port is underfunded by nearly 50%.
The money is collected as a fee on these shippers to pay for this. The money has been collected. It goes in the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund, $1.3 to $1.6 billion a year, of which less than half is being spent for harbor maintenance.
Strain said a current act in Congress could solve this entire problem. The Realize America's Maritime Promise, or the RAMP Act, would guarantee that funds from the harbor maintenance fee would go straight to the dredging and upkeep of channels and ports.
The money that is collected will be used for what it is intended for. We open up, we dredge, we fix our harbors, and we get back to business. We do not have time to wait.
At the port or on the farm, business never waits. In Lake Charles, I'm Kristen Oakes for This Week in Louisiana Agriculture.
Congressional lawmakers will meet October 10th in Washington, D.C. to discuss the RAMP Act and current problems at the Port of Lake Charles. To find out more information about the port and the upcoming October 10th meeting, you can visit our website at twilatv.org. Louisiana cotton growers beset by drought this year have been disappointed by lower than anticipated yields. This week in Louisiana Agriculture's A.J. Sabine tells us that dry weather has forced cotton pickers into the field much earlier than farmers had anticipated.
Rapides Parish cotton grower Fred Collins wrenches through his frustration with his cotton crop this year. Stymied by drought and a late season heavy rain, Collins just isn't getting as much fiber in the picker as he'd hoped. He says the lack of moisture plus high temperatures matured his cotton early.
It probably shut down the cotton prematurely because it matured out faster, and because it was dry, that we set a load fast and matured that crop out so that it doesn't have the stalk size and therefore the yield that it would had it been probably wetter, and it would have gone farther into the season before it cut out.
Dryland cotton growers as well as irrigated growers have suffered similar outcomes. LSU cotton specialist Dr. John Cruz says cotton variety selection, coupled with dry weather conditions, pushed pickers into the fields ahead of schedule.
Drought was coupled with very high temperatures, especially high nighttime temperatures, so that really built up the heat units. And cotton is a very determinate plant in the sense that it will do certain things at certain stages once it has accumulated a certain number of heat units. And since those built up so fast this year, we had an overall earlier harvest.
Cotton growers here in the Red River Valley say their cotton didn't grow as tall as they expected, due in part to dry weather conditions earlier this year. However, sandy soil conditions also contributed to stunted growth because of a lack of nutrients in the soil.
It's definitely off. I mean, all the weaker spots in the soil, because of whatever the soil content or the poor moisture levels, just made the cotton small for the most part, and the yields are off unless we've got some spots where it's irrigated and it's better, but overall the quality's fair, it looks like, but that rain kind of knocked a bunch of cotton out.
Despite this year's dry weather, Collins says he'd like to plant more cotton next year. In Rapides Parish, I'm A.J. Sabine for This Week in Louisiana Agriculture.
Cotton growers here in Louisiana expect to harvest about 288,000 acres of cotton this year. That's an increase of about 120,000 acres compared to last year's crop. And with harvest in full swing, now is the perfect time to get the opinion of someone who keeps close ties with farmers. This week in Louisiana Agriculture's Avery Davidson is standing by with the president of the Louisiana Farm Bureau to give us some more perspective. Avery?
Mike, the combines are rolling and harvest for 2011 is underway. Joining me now to talk about how things are going is Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation President Ronnie Anderson. Ronnie, speaking with farmers out there, how are things looking this harvest, considering it was probably one of the strangest growing seasons we've ever had with a drought and a flood at the same time?
It was amazing. We started out early, it was too wet, and then people got in and planted. Then we had farmers that had flood in part of the field and drought in part of the field. Those farmers that had irrigation and got rain at the right time are really having an exceptional harvest. Weather conditions have been great. We had that little storm came through and dumped a good bit of rain, but it was a good rain that a lot of people needed. The rain came and was gone very quickly, and the weather conditions improved so fast after that. Harvest is really going well. Everybody's really pleased with where they are at this stage.
What do you see being in the future for the LSU Ag Center, and what are you trying to do on the board to help out?
Well, I think if you look at what the Ag Center is doing, it's really, they've got so many people involved. But to counter that, they're closing some stations. They're doing a lease on a couple of stations. They're cutting back on some of the minor commodity stations around the state, which will help. That'll keep the major experiment stations open and running and doing the research they're doing. I really feel bad about the people, but they're down now to where it's only people that are left to be cut.
We are celebrating 30 years of being on the air here at This Week in Louisiana Agriculture. You, in the past, sat on the board which made the decision to begin a television program promoting agriculture across Louisiana for the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. Your thoughts on this 30-year journey?
Oh, it's been amazing. I was on the board when we first started talking about buying cameras and doing work and stuff like that, and it really shocked everybody the expense of the technology that we needed, and that technology has come so far since then. But we started out with humble beginnings. Reginald Wallace was key to all of that, and if you go back and you look at where we started and where we are now, you can really be pleased and proud of what we've done, the impact that we've had over the years with not only Louisiana information that goes to our people within Louisiana, but all over the country with RFD and some of the other mechanisms that we have to get our program around the country. But it's been quite a success story, and I don't know if I'll be here 30 years from now, but I sure like to see where we are then, and nothing but good things are going to happen. It'll continue to grow.
Well, we're looking forward to that future. Thank you very much. Ronnie Anderson, he is the president of the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. And if you want to see all of our stories and future stories, you'll be able to find them all on our website, twilatv.org. Mike, back to you.
Avery Davidson, thanks. Still to come on This Week in Louisiana Agriculture, we'll begin our look back at the last 30 years of This Week in Louisiana Agriculture by profiling the man who started it all. Stay with us. As you heard in Avery Davidson's interview with Farm Bureau President Ronnie Anderson, this week marks our 30th anniversary of This Week in Louisiana Agriculture. It was 30 years ago this week that the very first show aired on KNOE TV in Monroe. A week later, WAFB TV here in Baton Rouge began running our program, and since then, 17 cable and broadcast stations across Louisiana have aired our program. In 2000, the RFD TV network in Nashville began to distribute our program nationally, and each week nearly 500,000 viewers like you watch our program. This Week in Louisiana Agriculture was created by former Farm Bureau Director of Public Relations Reginald Wallace. Wallace was a farmer sportscaster for KALB TV in Alexandria in the early 1960s. In 1969, he came to work for the Farm Bureau, but it wasn't until the spring of 1981 did Wallace come up with the idea of a television program dedicated solely to news about agriculture. Today, it remains the only Louisiana television program whose mission is to tell the farmer's story. This Week in Louisiana Agriculture's Tammy Arender with a look now at the man who started it all.
KMAR. And I know the farmers are wanting some sunshine right now.
For nearly 30 years, he was considered the voice of Louisiana agriculture. He's responsible for almost single-handedly putting farm broadcasting on the map here in Louisiana. For Reginald Wallace, agriculture was part of who he was. Growing up on a farm in rural Crowville, Louisiana and Franklin Parish, he was surrounded by the cotton fields that once dominated the local landscape. So it was only natural that Wallace would spend a lifetime telling the farmer's story.
He loves agriculture. He grew up in agriculture. He grew up around agriculture. He understands the significance of agriculture. He understands its importance to the farmer on one end, to the consumer on the other, and he's out there telling the story.
You know, I worked with Reginald Wallace for 12 years on our program, and not once did I ever see Reg type out a script on a typewriter. He wrote all of his scripts out on a legal pad with a No. 2 pencil. He had come from the pioneering days of television. In our early days, there was no teleprompter, there was no internet, there was no HD camera. It was one-gun TV, and he made the most of it.
But first, these messages.
So it was a niche that was needed very definitely, and he filled that need for farmers and agriculture in Louisiana.
You know, we talk about Farm Bureau being the voice of agriculture. Reg was the voice of Farm Bureau.
A lot of people have deep voices, but Reg had that classic broadcast voice.
Good morning and welcome to This Week in Louisiana Agriculture. I'm Reginald Wallace.
Wallace began his broadcast career while serving in the U.S. Army in the late 1950s. His Farm Bureau career began in 1969 when he was named Information Director by then Farm Bureau President James Gronyard. Wallace's charge was to expand the message of agriculture beyond the organization's monthly newspaper, the Louisiana Farm Bureau News. Wallace would begin the company's public relations efforts by loosely organizing a group of radio stations that in 1998 would become the Louisiana Farm Bureau Radio Network. But it wasn't until 1981 that Wallace would create the cornerstone of the Farm Bureau's public relations efforts, its weekly television program, This Week in Louisiana Agriculture.
This Week in Louisiana Agriculture is produced by the Information Department of the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation.
Heretofore, you typed up your news release and mailed it or ran it down to the local TV newspaper stations and just prayed that they would use it so you could get your particular message out. Reg saw an entirely different thing.
And I remember when Reg went to the board of directors with his idea, I think probably a lot of them thought he was crazy. I certainly wasn't completely sold on the idea because I didn't really know what we were getting ready to get into. But Reg had a dream and he made it work.
The board, we thought about it, and after much discussion, we approved going forward, and it was a great investment. It's really turned dividends for us many times over.
When you look at what Reg Wallace did in the early 1980s by taking secular news technology and applying it to public relations, I mean, it was nothing short of genius. Reg figured the best way to break into the news cycles was to look like a news operation yourself, and that's exactly what he did.
The idea worked, and it worked so very well that Louisiana became the example that every other state farm bureau in the entire country has copied.
From what the people at USDA told you is the general outlook for the ag economy coming out of 1989 and going into 1990.
Over the years, Wallace reported on farm newsmakers in Louisiana and in Washington, all the while working to expand his viewers' and listeners' understanding of the importance of agriculture. In a 2006 interview, he said while agricultural issues have remained fairly constant over the years, it never diminished the importance of the message.
Agricultural issues don't change that much. We covered environmental issues and we tried to show that the farmer was an environmentalist and loved the land and loved the environment because that's how he made his living. So that was one of the issues. Farm prices, to try to explain how farm prices are set and why farm programs are necessary is a difficult thing to do. That sounds like a winner. You ready for your 3 count?
But it was something that needed to be done. There was no easy way for farmers in this state to find out what was going on.
Telling the story of agriculture was difficult for me because I had covered things like police beats and school boards and city councils. Agriculture was a completely different animal to me, and Reg taught me everything I know about telling a good farm news story.
He just has been totally dedicated to delivering that message, and it's a message that he believes in.
Although Reginald Wallace retired from the Louisiana Farm Bureau in 1997, he didn't stay retired very long. Returning home to Franklin Parish, he soon became farm director for KMAR Radio in Winsboro. His daily radio program, Round Franklin, can still be heard across Northeast Louisiana. And as his broadcast career surpasses the 50-year mark, Reg Wallace still remains the voice of Louisiana agriculture.
He did so much to further the advancement of agricultural reporting and telling that story to the people of Louisiana. He's an amazing man.
Really, his life's work has been to make agriculture better using the gift that God gave him of that wonderful voice.
He has made a universal statement across Louisiana about Louisiana agriculture and its significance, the economic impact, the social impact, cultural impact. It's been quite a message over the last 30 years.
There's really no doubt that Reg Wallace was a pioneer in the realm of farm broadcasting, and I think the farmers and ranchers of our state owe Reg Wallace a tremendous debt of gratitude for having spent a lifetime telling their story.
And for someone like Reg Wallace to do what he did shows a lot of dedication, a lot of service to this state that cannot be overlooked. He did a great job, he does a great job, and we can still learn a lot from him.
As you heard in Tammy Arnder's report, Reg Wallace can still be heard on the air on radio station KMAR in Winsboro. Wallace, who's 76, continues to bring farm news to his listeners across Northeast Louisiana, and we at This Week in Louisiana Agriculture are certainly grateful for his vision. Some final comments about our 30 years on the air when we come back. Stay with us. Over the last 30 years, the reporters, editors, and producers of This Week in Louisiana Agriculture have never lost sight of the important role farmers and ranchers play in our daily lives. In our early years, our program focused on the current state of traditional row crop production, cotton, rice, soybeans. But over the years, our program expanded to include legislative issues, consumer and environmental affairs, and most recently, the monthly cooking segment, Holly Clegg's Trimmin' Terrific Kitchen. Over the years, we've reported from 9 countries on 3 continents and produced shows from 26 states. From the Great Wall of China, from the Middle East to the Midwest, we've worked hard to bring you stories that matter, not only to farmers, but to all of us who depend on agriculture for the food we eat. Upon our return from Turkey last week, someone asked me why we travel outside the state and abroad when the name of our program is This Week in Louisiana Agriculture. Well, the answer is that farming today truly takes place on a global scale. No longer do farmers want to know just what their neighbors next door are doing, or even what farmers in neighboring states are up to. Today, Louisiana farmers want to know what their counterparts are doing around the world. It's all part of their efforts to continue to feed and clothe an ever-growing global population. And after 26 years as a farm journalist, I have found that farmers are farmers the world over. Get a group of producers sitting around a coffee pot at the Pointe-Coupee Co-op, a tea kettle in Wuxi in the Jiangsu province of China, or in the Mato Grosso area of Brazil, and ultimately the conversation will turn to the weather, commodity prices, and what's generally going on with their families and friends. We at This Week in Louisiana Agriculture like to think that farmers, perhaps more than any other profession, understand their importance to the world. There are lots of things we might not do today. We might not drive our cars, we might not use our computers, we might not even go to work. But the one thing we'll all do at least a few times a day is eat. And for that, you can thank a farmer. And we at This Week in Louisiana Agriculture want to thank you, our viewers, for being with us over the last 30 years. We truly appreciate the 30 minutes you give us each week. We'll continue to inform and entertain you, and by doing so, hope you'll continue to have a greater appreciation for the hardworking farmers and ranchers of our state. So thanks everyone for a great 30 years. It's been our pleasure. For all of us here at This Week in Louisiana Agriculture, I'm Michael Dana. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you again right here next week.